a small school on a lonely hill, where the night wind always carries whispers with no clear source. Since the death of Marianne, the student who was bullied until she took her own life inside classroom 312, the school has never known silence again. The blackboard sometimes writes on its own in red chalk. Windows creak open even when the air is still. And in the reflection of the bathroom mirror, some claim to see the faint figure of a long-haired girl standing motionless. They say Marianne's spirit never left. She's still there, waiting for each of them, one by one. Monday. Hawthorne High stood apart on a fog-draped hill, where ancient maple trees curled their crooked branches around a rusted iron fence. Every gust of wind made the metal moan, a low, mournful sound that carried through the night like someone whispering in pain. Amid the gloom, Marianne walked alone, her old shoes sinking into layers of dead leaves. Her eyes were vacant, as if her body still wandered the school grounds, while her soul drifted somewhere down the hall. From her very first day, Marianne had been an easy target. Her hair fell over half her face, making her look old, and her quiet nature only invited cruelty. Ethan, Olivia, and Ryan, the school's infamous trio, led the torment. Every day brought some new humiliation. Her name erased from project lists, notebooks hidden, cruel notes folded and thrown onto her desk like knives disguised as jokes. No one ever met her frightened gaze, and those who did simply looked away. At Hawthorne High, cruelty wasn't loud. It was quiet, patient, and it spread like mold on damp walls. One late afternoon, Marianne returned to class to retrieve her notebook and found the door to room 312 ajar. Inside, the flickering fluorescent light cast long, distorted shadows across the walls, as if people were still sitting in their chairs. On the blackboard, written in red chalk, was a single line: "You don't belong here." She froze. Her heart pounded. A cold draft swept through the room, scattering the chalk dust. When she blinked, the message was gone. That night, she dreamed of the classroom again. Empty. Silent, except for the soft drip of water somewhere unseen. On her desk, spread a dark, wet stain. Blood, inching outward. When she looked down, her hands were crimson. She woke with a gasp. The window in her bedroom stood wide open, curtains trembling. Outside, beneath the streetlight, stood a figure, thin, long-haired, unmoving, facing her house. The next morning, Marianne arrived early. The air in the corridor felt thick, unmoving. On the door of room 312, someone had drawn a strange mark, a broken circle, like an eye half shut. She touched it. The metal burned cold against her fingers. Footsteps echoed from the far end of the hall, slow, deliberate, drawing closer. She turned sharply. No one was there. But deep down, Marianne knew she wasn't alone. Something had been watching her for a long time. Outside the window, the wind rose and carried a faint sound through the fog, a soft, breathy laugh coming from room 312. Ah. After that morning, Marianne began to sense that everything around her was shifting. Room 312 felt heavier now, suffocating. Whenever she stepped inside, the light through the windows dimmed, and the air grew so cold it felt like someone had opened a door to the cellar of the earth. Chalk dust drifted down from the board, and the scrape of wooden chairs against the floor sounded like teeth grinding together. The bullying didn't stop. It evolved. Sharper, crueler, dotter. Someone stuffed her locker with torn photographs, glued together with animal blood. Inside her bag, she found a note scrawled in shaky handwriting. If you disappeared, no one would remember. Every time she walked through the hallway, faint laughter followed her, and then cut off suddenly, as if a hand had clamped over a mouth. Marianne tried to ignore it, but fear began to infect her dreams. At night, she heard footsteps on the roof, knuckles tapping rhythmically on her window, and once, a soft breath, warm and close against her neck. When she turned on the light, the room was empty. Only the curtains swayed. The smell of chalk and rust clung to her pillow. One afternoon during lunch, she slipped into room 312 while everyone was gone. The silence was absolute. The pale light from the window fell across the blackboard, where dozens of faint handprints appeared, overlapping, reaching out from the wall itself. Marianne froze. A whispering began. High, childlike voices fragmented. Stay with us. She bolted for the door, but before she could escape, it slammed shut behind her. That night, she sat still at her desk, staring at the mirror. Her reflection looked pale, hollow-eyed. But behind her, in the mirror's edge, something moved. A thin figure gliding past. She turned around. Nothing. Only the cold draft sliding through the gap under her door. On the table's edge, a long scratch appeared, as if made by fingernails. The next morning, the classroom was silent when she arrived. On the blackboard, written in thick, red ink, were the words, "Marianne is dead." The students laughed, called it a tasteless prank. But when she came closer, she saw the letters still glistening, the smell of metal rising, coppery and warm. That night, a storm swept through the town. Lightning split the sky above Marianne's house. Neighbors later said they heard screaming, a girl's voice, shrill and desperate, then silence. When dawn broke, her bedroom window stood wide open. The curtains were shredded, and on the desk, written in dark, dried streaks, "I'm still here." No one ever saw Marianne again. But since that night, whenever it rains over Hawthorne High, the last seat by the window in room 312 creaks softly, as if someone has just sat down. Way, ice. 3 days after Marianne vanished, Hawthorne High sank into an unnatural silence. The hallways felt longer, the classrooms dimmer, and a damp, moldy scent seeped through every crack of the old building. The teachers claimed she had simply run away, but everyone knew. No one leaves home in the middle of a storm like that night. Outside, maple leaves still clung wet to the ground, and in the puddle right before room 312, one could see the reflection of a girl with her head bowed, though no one was standing there. On Wednesday morning, the janitor found the door to room 312 slightly ajar. He pushed it open, and the hallway light spilled in, revealing dark stains dried across the floorboards. In the middle of the room, a chair lay overturned beside a snapped rope still dangling from the beam. There was no body, but deep claw marks scored the walls, frantic, twisting, as if someone had torn at the plaster in a desperate attempt to escape. When the police arrived, they only shook their heads. No signs of struggle, only a short note on the desk. "I'm tired. I just want it to be quiet. If you hear me, please, stay silent. The last line was jagged, shaky. A drop of blood had seeped into the paper, forming a red circle like a half-closed eye. Rumors spread quickly. Some students swore they'd seen a figure standing in room 312 at night, her hand pressed to the window, hair dripping wet, her clothes clinging as if she had just stepped out of the rain. Others claimed they heard humming, a soft, broken tune that drifted down the hallways long after midnight. They called it Marianne's lullaby. To calm the panic, the school sealed off room 312. The door was locked, the nameplate removed. But within a week, the night guard reported that the room's light still flickered on at 3:12 a.m. every night. When they cut the power, the light remained, faint, ghostly, as though fed by something that didn't belong to this world. Ethan, Olivia, and Ryan, the three who used to bully Marianne, began noticing strange things. Ethan heard tapping behind him whenever he walked the corridor, but when he turned, only his distorted shadow stretched across the floor. Olivia found strands of wet hair tangled in her desk, the air heavy with a metallic rotten smell. Ryan started dreaming of room 312, the door yawning open, and inside, Marianne sat in the last row, back turned, yet he could feel her eyes watching him through the dark. One evening, curiosity drew Olivia back to the sealed room. The door was locked, yet when her fingers brushed the handle, it turned on its own. Inside, the air was freezing. Her breath came out in pale mist. The blackboard was blank, until, slowly, letters began carving themselves onto its surface in dull red strokes, as if etched by invisible nails. "Do you remember?" Olivia stumbled backward, dropping her flashlight. The beam rolled across the floor, catching long streaks, like smeared blood, leading toward the back desk. There, an old class photo lay face down. With trembling hands, she turned it over. On the back, in scrawled handwriting, "I'm still in class with you." The door slammed shut. The light died. In that split second before darkness swallowed everything, Olivia saw her reflection in the window, and behind her, a girl with long, dripping hair, hollow eyes, and lips stretched to a silent scream. "Katsiwa, deep seas, you, we." It wasn't her reflection. The next morning, they found Olivia collapsed in the hallway, whispering two words over and over. "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." But the most terrifying detail, on her sleeve, a small, wet handprint was pressed deep into the fabric. It would not wash away. From that day on, whenever the wind passed through the old building, one could hear the creak of rope swinging from the beam inside room 312, as though someone was still gently swaying in the dark. Ulale. After the night Olivia collapsed, an oppressive dread settled over Hawthorne High. No one dared to say Marianne's name anymore. They called her, it, that thing in room 312. Though the classroom had been sealed off again, flickering light still leaked through the crack beneath the door, and whenever the wind blew across the hall, a faint metallic scent drifted out, the smell of rust or blood. Ethan was the first to lose sleep. At first, it was just whispers, faint scratching, the creak of a chair, the slow drag of chalk across a board. Then came the breathing, long, steady exhales right beside his ear when he tried to rest. Every time he turned on the light, the room was empty. Yet on the wall, faint words written in charcoal appeared over the nights. "Ethan, you will remember everything." He thought it was a cruel prank, but by the third night, reason gave way to terror. When he wiped the fog off his bathroom mirror, a girl's reflection stood behind him, hair dripping over her face, arms blackened and wet, her breath fogging the glass. Ethan screamed and bolted from the room. When he looked back, the door had slammed shut. The mirror cracked, and from the fissures, droplets of blood slid down, not his own. Ryan tried to stay calm, convincing himself it was stress. But the nightmares came. Every night he dreamed of an endless hallway slick with water. At the far end stood Marianne, motionless, her back to him. She never spoke. She only began to walk backward, each step drawing her closer, closer, until her soaked hair brushed against his cheek. He'd jolt awake, drenched in cold sweat, while somewhere above him, water dripped steadily from the ceiling. One morning, Ryan arrived at school to find a message scrawled across the blackboard. 2 left. No one knew who wrote it, but Ethan did. Olivia was gone, confined to a psychiatric ward, eyes vacant, lips still murmuring apologies. Now only Ethan and Ryan remained, the last two in Marianne's game. Panicked, Ethan went to the principal, begging to transfer. The old man's trembling hand spilled coffee as he looked up, eyes hollow. "You think you can leave this place?" he rasped. "We've had disappearances before, rooms locked, names erased. But no one truly leaves, son. They all stay, somewhere in these halls." The words echoed in Ethan's head all night. Desperate, he fled the dorm and ran straight for room 312. The door wasn't locked. Inside, the air was freezing. Dust blanketed the blackboard, but Marianne's desk still stood in the center, her chair slightly pulled out as if waiting. On the surface lay a mold-stained notebook. Ethan's hands trembled as he opened it. The pages were soaked, sticking together, except one in the middle, still legible. "Tomorrow they'll laugh again, but I won't cry anymore. I want them to know what it feels like. To be seen, mocked, and swallowed whole by silence. I'll leave a part of myself here, in the walls, in the wind, in every breath they take." The page was stiff, darkened, as if blood had soaked through from behind. Ethan dropped the notebook. The door slammed shut. The lights flickered violently. Water trickled from the corners of the ceiling, spreading across the floor in winding trails toward his feet. The air smelled of rot and iron. Then she appeared. Marianne, drenched, skin pale as paper, eyes sunken and dead, her mouth twisted into a crooked smile. She stepped forward soundlessly. Her feet didn't touch the ground, but the floorboards groaned beneath her as though in pain. Ethan stumbled backward, knocking over desks, reaching blindly for the handle. But the light died. Darkness swallowed him. Only the sound of her breathing remained, slow, rasping, close. Then the whisper. "Do you remember that night when I begged you to stop, Ethan screamed, or tried to. But instead of a cry, water gurgled from his throat, bubbling past his lips. His lungs filled, his body convulsed. As his vision blurred, Marianne's face hovered inches from his, eyes hollow, yet burning with an endless, vengeful grief. When dawn came, room 312 was empty. But on the back wall, behind Marianne's desk, a new shadow had appeared. Faint but unmistakable. It was the outline of a boy, arms outstretched, frozen in a silent plea for help. Since that day, anyone walking past room 312 hears a second pair of footsteps echoing behind them. Slow, steady, and always just one step too close. After Ethan's death, Hawthorne High descended into chaos. The building was sealed off, police swarmed the halls, yet nothing was found, only the warped floor of room 312, slick with water stains, and hundreds of small handprints smeared across the walls. Classes were suspended. The campus fell silent. Only Ryan remained, the last survivor, wandering through the empty courtyard as though drawn backward into a memory that refused to fade. He couldn't forget that laughter. His own laughter. The echo of it, cruel and sharp, when Marianne had pleaded for mercy. "Please, stop," she had begged, tears streaking her face, and they had laughed, cornering her in that room, their joy feeding on her humiliation. Now, that same laughter followed him down every corridor, warped, distorted, ricocheting off the lockers like the ghost of a punishment too long delayed. On the final night, Ryan returned to room 312. The door resisted as if breathing against him. The air inside was freezing, heavy with the scent of stagnant water. The floor was damp beneath his shoes. In the center stood the same broken chair, the same frayed rope hanging from the beam. But on the desk, something new waited, a small, cracked mirror, its fractured surface catching the pulse of the flickering light above. Ryan stepped closer. His reflection stared back, exhausted, hollow-eyed. Then, within the cracks, another face began to form. A girl with drenched black hair. Eyes empty sockets. Mouth sewn shut with dark red thread. "Marianne." She said nothing. She only raised a trembling hand and pointed to the chair in the middle of the room. The rope swayed gently, inviting. Ryan stumbled backward, panic clawing through his chest, but his feet wouldn't move. The air thickened. The stench of pond water rose from the floorboards. The light above flickered, sputtered, then steadied into a dim pulse, like a dying heartbeat. And then the whisper came, soft, deliberate, so close it grazed his ear. "It's your turn." The rope tightened around his throat. No hands pulled it. No body moved. The entire room trembled as though a cold wind had swept through. Yet, every window was sealed shut. Ryan's fingernails tore against the wall, leaving streaks of red across the faded paint. In the mirror, Marianne's reflection smiled. By morning, room 312 was locked again. The police forced the door open. There was no body, only ankle-deep water rippling across the floor, and on the blackboard, scrawled in uneven handwriting. "I'm quiet now." Hawthorne High was abandoned after that. 10 years passed. The paint peeled, ivy climbed the walls, and yet, every night at 3:12 a.m., the light in room 312 still flickered on. Locals say that sometimes when the wind shifts, you can hear faint laughter mingling with the sound of wet footsteps. A few dared to explore. When they opened the swollen door, they found the old classroom list still written on the board. But each time someone entered, a new name appeared, written in a trembling, crimson hand. No one remembers who Marianne was anymore. But everyone who passes the hill where Hawthorne High still stands swears that, for just a moment, they can feel someone behind them, smiling in perfect, suffocating silence. "Nee,"